It's me again. I'm back with more of my way too ambitious medieval Plague Doctor game. It's finally time for my first devlog, so buckle up. Today, we answer the question, how do you be a big nerd but also make a fun game? One of the first things I knew about my game was that you would play as a medieval doctor trying to treat a plague. I wanted management of patients to be a main feature, not just set dressing, so I got to work planning my medical system. Now you may already know, I am a massive nerd, so naturally I wanted my game to be historically and scientifically accurate, at least as much as possible. The only issue there is that it also kinda needs to be fun. That turned out to be a much harder goal than I expected. Balancing historical realism, scientific fact, and gameplay isn't easy, but eventually I figured something out. Here's how it works. During the day, you treat patients, explore, and generally do things that awake people usually do. At night, you sleep, and the game's world shifts. In short, things don't evolve in real time. Every night, I make a whole bunch of dice rolls to decide who gets sick, who gets worse, who gets better, and who goes to the big Unity garbage collector in the sky. Basically, time is fake. The game runs on turns instead, which move forward each night. My system is made up of 4 parts. Symptoms, which cause damage. Tests, which you use to find out which symptoms are active. Ingredients, used to make treatments. And treatments, which are used to fight symptoms and prevent damage to your patient. By evolving and interacting with each other, these form a reasonably complex gameplay loop. Translating medieval medicine and actual horrible diseases into an interesting game meant making some sacrifices. Immediately, I knew I didn't want the system to just be an Excel spreadsheet. So I needed to gamify it, and I knew the perfect inspiration. As a kid with a budding morbid fascination with horror, I was captivated by the old Flash game Dark Cut. In it, you play as a medieval doctor, doing a bunch of mouse-based minigames to perform various medical procedures, like suturing cuts or placing leeches. I thought this kind of system would make the player's actions feel real, visceral. I wanted to feel like a battle, a constant back and forth between you and the plague, as you desperately try to keep these people alive. It should have weight. You should always feel present in the reality of the situation. And I don't think you feel that when you're hitting buttons in a menu. Instead, you should feel like your hands are slick with blood. You're desperately suturing, sawing, mixing to keep this person alive. And you feel the hands of death always close. To achieve this, treatments and tests will both be interactive, with special minigames that get you up close and personal with your patients. I love medieval history, and I wanted to integrate it into my game as much as possible. But I'm not trying to create a perfect simulation. Ultimately, I'm willing to sacrifice historical and scientific accuracy for the sake of gameplay. Somewhat. A major concession I made was in my medical system. If you don't know much about medieval medicine, you might be surprised at how much of it did actually work, at least a little bit. Medieval people weren't stupid, and a lot of their treatments were reasonably effective. Willow bark was a common medieval remedy for fever, and is the basis of modern aspirin. In tea or poultices, it did actually help. But there was also a lot of medieval medicine that was based on superstition, hearsay, and just plain weird assumptions. Hey, this thing sure looks like blood. That's gotta mean it helps fix blood, right? Oh no, it's poison. The issue here is that in a game where you're trying to stop people from dying, being given treatments that just don't work isn't fun. So, for the sake of gameplay, I just went with it. Medieval treatments that have now been found to be questionable, well, they just work. Of course, I tried not to push this too far, treatments should all be plausible, but I didn't want players to have to sift through a bunch of weird, not actually effective treatments to find something that actually helps. Now that's out of the way, let's actually talk about how this all functions in-game. Every villager in the game has a scriptable object. In Unity, these are basically containers for storing a whole bunch of custom information. You can think of them like a form that we fill out for each character. In my case, they store stuff like the villager's name, their family, their relationship to the player, their location, and much, much more. But for now, we're only really concerned with their health score, or physical well-being, their mind score, or mental well-being, their list of symptoms, and their list of applied treatments. For now, health and mind scores have a max value of 100, but this very well may change later on. When a symptom is active on a villager, it means that when night comes, it will roll dice. An active symptom can have two main impacts: physical damage, meaning damage to the person's health score, or pain, meaning damage to the person's mind score. Both of these are based on dice rolls. Let's look at a moderate fever, for example. Every night that a villager has a moderate fever, there is a 30% chance of 6 to 18 physical damage being caused, and a 40% chance of 0 to 8 points of pain being caused. Symptoms also have a chance of decaying, meaning they either disappear completely or are replaced by a lesser symptom. For example, our moderate fever has a 25% chance of becoming a mild fever each night. If you're unlucky, symptoms also have a chance of progressing, or even causing entirely new symptoms. An infection might become necrosis, or a fever might cause dehydration and confusion. The thing about symptoms is that they aren't always immediately visible. To find out what symptoms are active on your patient, and thus what treatments you need to apply, you'll need to perform tests. Currently, there are 5 types of tests in the game. A physical exam involves looking at the patient's body and talking to them about how they feel. It can reveal things like pox, pale skin, and headaches. A pulse check means feeling the patient's pulse and listening to their breathing. It can reveal things like dyspnea, arrhythmia, and chest pain. A wound check involves examining any wounds closely. It can find infections, necrosis, or previously unknown lesions. Bloodletting is a medieval classic. It involves extracting some of the patient's blood and performing different tests to examine its properties. It can reveal things like anemia, sepsis, and their overall health score. And finally, if there's one thing that you very quickly learn researching medieval medicine, it's that they were just obsessed with pee. It was a central focus of medieval doctors, to the point that a urine flask was a widely accepted symbol of medical practitioners. So I didn't feel I could completely exclude it from the game. A urine exam involves comparing the patient's urine to medical charts and diagrams. It can be used to diagnose things like dehydration, anemia, and jaundice. Because I am merciful, I have decided not to simulate the very common medieval medical practice of taste testing. Most of these tests can be done at any time, but more complex urine or blood exams may require certain ingredients. On that note, let's talk about ingredients. These effectively act as gateways to more complicated tests and treatments, introducing some resource management to the player's worries. I want triage and management to be a major part of the game, and I felt like this was a good way to achieve that. Ingredients can be foraged, purchased, or given to you by villagers. This is where befriending certain villagers can come in handy. The midwife and her daughter, for instance, are excellent sources of herbs, and they know all the local spots for picking them. Others may help in unexpected ways too. For instance, the brewer could provide high-proof alcohol for use in sterilizing wounds. The absolute rarest ingredients will come from the university, the doctor's home in the capital city. However, these will not be plentiful, and will take a couple of days to arrive. They should be used sparingly, saved for only the most dire of patients. Complex ingredients will also require extra knowledge to use. You might need to read old tomes and find obscure methods before they're useful to you. I mentioned that ingredients act as gateways to complex treatments. The simplest treatments require no special ingredients at all. These are things like hearty soup, rehydration, and rest. Others might require a single ingredient, like basic herbal teas. More complex treatments will need 2 or 3 ingredients. These are things like poultices and tinctures, and they're more effective against symptoms. And finally, the most effective treatments will require many ingredients, including some rare ones. These are things like specialized wound wraps and elixirs, and they're excellent at treating even the most difficult ailments, but they aren't easy to get hold of. Treatments are also tied to the day and night system. Once you apply a treatment, it's added to the patient's applied treatments list. They won't take effect instantly. Instead, you'll have to wait and see their impact the next day. Effectively, they add their own dice rolls to the pile that are rolled every night when you sleep. Treatments can help to prevent symptoms from progressing, prevent new symptoms from being caused, prevent or counteract damage to the patient's physical health score, and cancel out pain damage to the patient's mental health score. However, some treatments may also risk causing new symptoms. Usually, this would be something pretty benign, like dizziness or nausea from a strong tincture. But sometimes, death is closing in fast, and drastic measures must be taken to save your patient's life. Okay, talking about my game is easy, but where is my actual progress in all this? It's actually pretty far. This is one of the first systems I worked on because it was one of the first things I could clearly visualize about the game. Everything except the minigames attached to tests and treatments is implemented. This means symptoms are fully coded, including evolution, regression, and damage dice rolls at night. Tests can reveal symptoms, but have no minigame attached to them yet. Ingredients can be gathered and are stored in a player inventory, and they're used up when applying certain treatments or tests. And treatments prevent and remove symptoms and require ingredients to use, though again, no minigames yet. Together, all of these things form a system that I'm actually pretty happy with. To give an idea of what this would actually play like, let's run through an example day from a player's perspective. You arrive at the farmer's cottage, nestled in the fields just outside the village, trying to ignore the stench rising from the mounds of dead cattle nearby. Entering the dimly lit house, you find the farmer's family gathered nervously around a straw pallet. The farmer, Gideon, is killed there. His face is pale and clammy. You start with a physical exam, checking his body and asking how he feels. There's evidence of a severe fever, and you quickly notice lesions on his skin. Looking closer with a wound exam, you find an infected lesion on his leg that looks pretty bad. He winces as you touch the flesh there. A urine exam reveals that he's severely dehydrated, dangerously so. After a moment to think, you get to work washing his wounds with alcohol. Then, you apply a salve made from willow bark and honey. To lower the fever, you send his wife to put on some feverfew tea, and instruct her to keep him hydrated as much as possible. Then, you depart, praying that your efforts will not be in vain. There is, after all, never any guarantee. You learned that a long time ago. The farmer is still in your mind as you drift off to sleep that evening. The next morning, you arrive to check on your patient. Gideon is sitting now, still pale, but better. A new exam reveals that his fever has improved and the wound has not worsened. Things are looking up, but death is always close in this place. His chances are fair, for now. So, that's where it stands currently. I imagine a lot of changes will come once I can start properly playtesting and balancing, but for now, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm super excited to make some gory minigames. Dark Cut was a major part of my introduction to horror media as a kid, and it's one of the main inspirations for this project, so the idea of being able to make my own versions of it is pretty exciting. What do you think of the system so far? Do you think it actually sounds fun? I love any recommendations or feedback you have, it's always welcome. This has been a retrospective devlog. I did all of this work before I even started this channel, so I couldn't include any of the live evolution or struggles of the development. I'd love to do a proper live devlog next, maybe the creation of the minigames. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you're interested in joining me on this weird little journey, hit the subscribe button and drop a like or comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Honestly, it's still pretty mind-blowing that people are actually interested in this project, so thanks again. See you guys next time.